The man standing in my living room had been dead for 20 years. I knew this for a fact, because I was the one who bought his empty casket. But as my crystal glass slipped from my numb fingers and shattered against the hardwood floor, crack, he didn't even flinch. He just stepped over the broken glass, pointed a manicured finger at my 20-year-old daughter, and whispered, "She has my eyes. Pack her bags. I'm taking my heir home." My brain couldn't process it. The man I had mourned, the man I had scrubbed hospital floors to survive without, was standing here in a $5,000 suit. But before I could even scream, a woman in a silk trench coat stepped out from behind him, and what she handed me next made my blood run absolutely cold. She didn't hand me an apology. She handed me a 20-year-old bank statement, and when I saw the signature at the bottom, I realized my entire life was I know this sounds like a twisted movie plot, but I promise you, the betrayal gets so much worse. Before I reveal the sickening reason why my husband faked his death and left us to rot in poverty, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments, if someone you loved came back from the dead, would you forgive them or destroy them? Let's get into it. 20 years ago, my reality was shattered during the Great Storm. My husband, Julian, a young ambitious architect, was driving home when a massive section of the Blackwood Bridge collapsed. 6 cars plunged into the freezing, churning river below. The news footage played on an endless, agonizing loop. They found his crushed car, but the river had swept him away. I was 20 years old, heavily pregnant, and completely alone. I went into labor that exact night. While the rescue divers searched the freezing waters for my husband's body, I was pushing our daughter Maya into the world, surrounded by the smell of sterile hospital sheets and my own suffocating grief. The years that followed were a masterclass in survival. I was a widow with 0 savings. I worked 3 jobs just to keep the heat on. I cleaned corporate offices until 4 a.m., my hands cracking and bleeding from cheap industrial bleach. I remember sitting on our kitchen floor in the dead of winter, wrapped in 2 sweaters, crying silently into a towel so I wouldn't wake my baby. I did it. I raised Maya. I told her that her father was a hero taken too soon. She grew up kissing his photograph goodnight. I wore my silver wedding band until the metal literally wore thin. I was loyal to a ghost. Fast forward to last night. The knock on the door changed the trajectory of my universe. Julian stood in my entryway, smelling of expensive sandalwood cologne and absolute arrogance. "I had amnesia, Elara," he lied smoothly, his eyes completely devoid of warmth. The crash, I woke up in a clinic with no memory. It took me 2 decades to piece my identity together. I didn't want to disrupt your life until I was sure. I stared at the silver at his temples, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Amnesia," I whispered, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. That's when the woman in the silk coat pushed past him. Her name was Claire. Her eyes were hard, scanning my modest apartment with pure disgust. "Oh, stop the pathetic act, Julian," she snapped. The room went dead silent. Claire turned her diamond-clad hand toward me. "He didn't have amnesia, Elara. He was my lead architect. I met him exactly 2 weeks before the bridge collapsed. He didn't fall into that river. He jumped out of his car before the bridge gave way. He had a bag packed in the trunk of my car, parked safely on the other side." She dropped a heavy envelope onto my table. "He used the disaster to erase his massive gambling debts. He started over with my family's money. My lungs forgot how to work. You left me to starve," I choked out, staring at the man I had loved. "You let me raise your child in poverty while you played billionaire." Julian didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. "I'm a very wealthy man now, Elara, but Claire and I, we are incapable of having children." He turned his predatory gaze toward Maya, who was trembling by the staircase. I saw Maya's profile on her university's honors list. "She has my intellect. She doesn't belong in this pathetic, struggling life. I've come to give her the sterling empire. I've come to take my heir." The silence in the room was deafening. He wasn't here for me. He wasn't here to apologize. He was here to go shopping for a ready-made daughter. I prepared to launch myself at him, but Maya stepped forward. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. The cold, calculated rage in her eyes was far more terrifying. She walked up to Julian, looking at the man whose picture she had kissed every night for 20 years. "Take me home," Maya asked, her voice a low, lethal hum. You think you can buy 20 years of missed birthdays and my mother's bleeding hands with a cheap checkbook? Julian reached out. Maya, be reasonable. I can give you the world. I am your father. Maya swatted his hand away like it was a disease. The man in the photo on my nightstand was a hero who died tragically. You looked him up and down with absolute revulsion. You are just a coward in a nice suit. You're completely dead to me. And this time, we aren't throwing a funeral. She turned to Claire. Take your parasite back to your mansion. If he ever comes near my mother again, I will personally take this story to every news outlet in the country and sink your family's stock to zero. I walked to the door, opened it wide, and stared him down. Get out. Julian and his mistress left, slipping into the night like the snakes they were. I posted this story on Reddit to process the insanity, and the internet went absolutely scorched earth. User Justice Seeker 99 said, "Not the asshole. This isn't amnesia. This is calculated life theft. He didn't just abandon a wife. He left a human being in survival mode. Sue him for 20 years of back child support plus emotional damages." User Logic first added, "Check the life insurance immediately. If he faked his death and you collected anything, he's putting you in legal danger. Get a shark of a lawyer and drain his accounts." User Karma Queen wrote, "Maya is an absolute legend. A coward in a nice suit is the ultimate destruction. He wanted an heir and ended up with nothing. He left a cashier's check on our table for $500,000. Living expenses, he called it. Maya wants to rip it to shreds. I want to use every single penny to pay off her student loans and buy the house we always dreamed of. So, I need your advice. Should we burn the blood money to keep our pride, or should we cash the check as the ultimate tax for the 20 years he stole from us? Drop your verdict in the comments.